You know, as I was preparing for this message, I started thinking about my days at Regent College, which is a seminary they call the unseminary. And if you don't know, seminary is a place where they go and like pump pastors out. So it's the unseminary. I went to this unseminary to learn how to be a pastor, and I came out like, what does it mean to be a pastor? Wasn't really sure. I took courses in Greek and Hebrew, church history, even some counseling, and I got to my first church, and I thought, I guess the thing is, gotta fake it to make it. Like, what does it mean to be a pastor? I remember asking the lead pastor there and thinking, he might not know because he's kind of old. He was like 45. And how do I be a pastor? Like, do I have to hold myself in a certain way when I'm dealing with people? Do I have to talk to people in a certain way? Do I have to like throw spiritual spice into every conversation, right? Is this how you do it? I wasn't really sure. The unseminary made me an unpastor. By the way, I'm still learning today. You guys know that, right? I'm still not sure about the answer to this question. But as I tried to deal with that, I started to realize that it was actually more a question of expectations than it was a question of how to be a pastor. It was a question of what expectations do people have of me, and what do I have of myself in that relationship? And as I went through that journey, I realized that I had some expectations that maybe weren't that helpful. I mean, one of the expectations I had was that I kind of needed to know all the answers. Like, kind of a bit Bible answer man, but not being a Bible answer man. It's kind of awkward, right? So there's pressure that you got to have all the answers and figure out what to do. That was an expectation that I thought people had of me that I put on myself. Sometimes there was also an expectation that, you know, when you meet with someone, that it's not going to be a good meeting. They're going to try to get you for something. But I learned that actually that's not true, that expectation was false, because people usually have good intentions when you meet with them. Had all these expectations of how I was supposed to be. I had expectations about leadership too, and leadership and power, and you don't really learn a lot of this stuff. How do you handle this stuff? Does a leader exercise power and authority in a certain way? And as I've done this, I'm learning more and more that leadership is about giving away power, not taking it for yourself. These are all expectations. And I feel that as we journey through our faith and as we look at the passage today, I think all of us maybe have expectations of who Jesus is and who he is in our lives. And we bring those expectations to Jesus and how we act. And I think it's a really important question, because often those expectations are about us and our own issues. Like my expectations on my first congregation were actually more about myself. Sometimes our expectations of who Jesus is are about who we want him to be. And I believe Jesus has some unexpected for us. And I think as we journey through Lent, the challenge, Lent is the season of moving through the season of Lent. It's a circular sentence. You learn that in seminary. Lent is the season of moving through Lent. It starts with Ash Wednesday. It's a season of spiritual discipline where you try to go deeper in your faith, and we move towards Easter, and then Lent is over. So as we journey through Lent this year, I really, really hope that we will see some unexpected Jesus. We'll come and see, and that something will be revealed that will draw us deeper to him and help us show him more to other people. You know, I know that the words of John 1, the opening words are really familiar to a lot of us, and we may have expectations. You're going to know this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Probably familiar to most of us. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness shall not overcome the light. And I wonder if we can hear those words without expectation. It's an interesting question. I mean, we're familiar with who this is because we've read the rest of the story. We know they're talking about Jesus as the light. We know that Jesus conquered death and the grave and rose again. We know these things. We know how the story ends. We know that he was sent as Messiah. But I wonder what it looked like for those first people to hear these words, because I have a sense that glory and Jesus and the Messiah looked like something they did not expect. It was something unexpected. We know that Israel had expectations of Messiah. And by the way, when I say Messiah, think Christ. This is what this means in the Bible. Christ is Messiah. They had expectations of Christ, of Messiah. Messiah would come, and it would be really a time of, I told you guys so, that we were the people. I told you. You shouldn't have tried to oppress us, because here's our Messiah, and we're going to put you in your place. We're actually going to be restored to the center of the world stage with power and glory. That's what they hoped for. That's what they were expecting Messiah to do, to bring the glory of the Davidic kingdom back. But glory looked different, and the Messiah looked different when he came. We continue reading the Gospel of John, and we heard it read earlier, John 9 to 14, but I'm just going to read the first two verses right now. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the very world he created, but the world did not recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. It's kind of weird. Like, how could that be? How could he come to the world that he created, the creator, the one who made everything, and the creation doesn't recognize the creator? It's kind of a surprising turn. How could he come to his own people, and his own people don't recognize him? There's something unexpected happening here. And when I read this, I thought of that great TV show that I'm sure all of you are fans of, Undercover Boss, right? This idea that he came and no one recognized him. Some of the best episodes of Undercover Boss have this tension of us knowing who he is, or who she is, who the boss is, and the people not knowing. This is kind of like that. We know, but they don't know. You are good. I remember some episodes when the undercover boss goes to work, and they just treat people terribly, and the boss fires people right on the spot. It feels a bit like that. He came to his own thing. No one really knew who he was. He wasn't recognized. The world he created, he's a creator, doesn't recognize him. His own people don't recognize him because he's not what's expected. It's interesting, this text has some more unexpected things. The first is that God came and he dwelled among us. And I find this section is full of unexpected. The light of the world, the Word, God, the Creator, came in an unexpected way. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. I'm going to stop there for now. He made his dwelling among us. It's hard to see this, but you can know that the Bible translations struggle with putting this into words because it's said so differently in different translations. The word that a lot of Bibles use, or some of the older Bibles, is tabernacled. He came and tabernacled among us. That's a bit strange. It's like we know a tabernacle is a noun. It's like a verbified noun, tabernacled, right? Can you do that? I don't know if that's fair, teacher, in grammar, but he tabernacled. He came and literally set up a tent. The Word came and set up a tent among his people. Set up a tent. That's not really what I expected. God came with a tent. Makes me wonder, what's the big boss, the undercover boss, doing in a tent? Right? Because this is the creator of the universe, and he doesn't really need to stay in a tent. He should stay in a huge temple or a palace or something more suitable. Tents don't seem to have the suitable glory for God. They don't have a lot of glory. I mean, maybe some of them are pretty cool. A little bit of glory if you're a rock climber and you have your tent hanging on a 1,000-foot cliff. That's okay, that's a bit of glory. A bit less glory if you go camping every year and take your tent out and it's full of mold because you didn't dry it the year before. That's more like a tent. Tents can have even less glory. Tents are the homes of refugees who come looking for a home and foundations, but find that they're dwelling in a temporary home and have nowhere to live. Tents are the places that people who have no home live in our city, in what we call a tent city. That's who dwells in a tent. He came and he set up a tent among his people. That's kind of unexpected. And I don't know, it's what people wanted in their Messiah. We know God came with a tent before. It's not the first time he came with a tent. You know, the story of Israel is about Israel leaving Egypt captivity in these brick and stone homes with solid doors, and they go and escape, and they live in tents. They wander in the desert for 40 years in tents. There are tent people. No solid place. They have no home. They're just moving from place to place in tents. And this continues. And the interesting thing is that God comes and meets the people of Israel, and he says this, I will put my dwelling place among you. This is Leviticus 26:11. I will put my dwelling place among you. I will be your God. You will be my people. And you probably guessed it. Dwelling place is the same word as tabernacle. Two different languages, but they're playing on the same thing. He tabernacled among the people. God came with a tent. He set up his tent with the people and dwelled with the people. I will dwell. I will set up my tent with you. I will be with you where you are. It's like God came, set up his tent in your front yard. Mowed, unmowed, clover, grass, dandelions, whatever it is. That's where he set up his tent. That's not really what's expected. He also came in a way that they didn't recognize him. And this was maybe more shocking, and we learn more about God in this. And I think they would say they felt he was less than they expected. The Word became flesh. The tent dweller, God, also became flesh. So this means that God, who came with a tent, needs a tent on a rainy day because he's going to get wet and be uncomfortable and catch a cold and start sneezing. The God of the universe, the light, who created everything, came with a tent in flesh and needed shelter because he was vulnerable. Now, flesh is a really fleshy word. I had to say that. It's flesh and bones, it's blood and bowels. This is what we're talking about here. This is the original language. That's what flesh is here. It's earthy. It's not what was expected. What was expected was that he would come and have a place of power, a temple or a palace, not a tent. That he would come more like fire than flesh. That he would be extraordinary, not ordinary. We also talk about his glory being revealed. And I think what was expected was a certain type of glory, a certain type of power, and what was revealed didn't look like what was expected. We know what was expected. Moses wanted to see God, and he asked to see God's face, and God said, you can't even see my face. You'll die if you see my face. But I'll pass by, but you won't be able to see my face. You just see my back. That's enough glory for you. We also know that the glory of God was in a pillar of fire. The glory of God was also in the Holy of Holies. And the high priest could only go into the Holy of Holies one day a year because it was too much and it was too holy. He could go in on Yom Kippur to make atonement for the people. One day a year. And we know the story maybe of the Ark of the Covenant that I always thought was the most unfair story. Well, maybe not the most, but one of the most unfair stories in the Bible is this poor guy sees this cart coming into the city. This ox is pulling the Ark of the Covenant, and the ox stumbles, and he thinks, I can't let that ark fall. And he goes to catch it so it doesn't get smashed on the ground, and God kills him instantly. That's the glory they're expecting. It's not the glory that came. It's quite different. Some saw the glory. The second half of verse 14. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. He came with a tent in the flesh. And this is glory. That's what glory looks like. Coming with a tent in a flesh. They don't belong together. It's like Adrian here. I know he's safe to pick on because he picks on me. I know. It's like Adrian going to a car dealership and saying, I need a new vehicle. I'm looking for an electric one that's really, really efficient. Gets really good for the environment. It's super quiet. And I also want it to have a lift and diesel. And I want to roll coal. Can you get that for me? Yes, those two things don't belong together, right? I mean, one's a big Dodge lifted truck and one's an electric car. They don't belong together. These categories, did you find one? Okay, keep looking. These don't belong together. Glory and tent and flesh don't belong together. God is glorious, and God came in a tent in the flesh. This is unexpected glory. And I think we have to be mindful that this glory was unfolded all through the Gospels. And we see what this glory looks like even more than this. The glory of Jesus that he showed was Jesus walking with the outcasts, not the people of power. Jesus always sought the people who were on the margins. That's what God's glory looked like. God's glory was revealed in his miracles when he caused the blind to see. And ironically, it was those who see, those who know, who didn't see. The Pharisees and teachers. They didn't see, but the blind saw. Jesus' glory was confronting the religious, the in crowd. Most of the Gospels deal with this. Jesus confronting the churchy people of the time. That's unexpected. He spoke against the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and religious leaders. As a matter of fact, one of the stories that I think is incredible that we sometimes miss in Matthew is when Jesus comes and he flips over the money changer tables. But this is the part we miss. He spends 3 chapters in Matthew preaching against the teachers of the law. He took over the pulpit. What would we do if someone kicked us out and took over the pulpit and started preaching a different message? That's what he did. He took over and preached against them for 3 whole chapters. 5 parables and 7 woes against the Pharisees and teachers of the law in their pulpit. That's a temple takeover. That's his glory. His glory was shown in his humility. I mean, not least of which was washing his disciples' feet when they didn't expect that. That was what glory looked like. His glory was his death on a cross, which confronted all the notions of power and glory at the time. That was his revelation of glory and what Jesus looks like, is he would come and dwell with us in flesh and die on a cross. That was the glory that people couldn't accept, that was unaccepted and unexpected. Now, I think there's a call for us in this portrayal of God's glory being unexpected and hard for people to see. You know, I'm aware that we're actually in some ways people of a tent. Did you know that? We're people of a tent. We're called to dwell, but we're temporary, we're foreigners. We don't belong here. We live here as temporary people that belong to the kingdom of God as our primary place. We're kind of nomads here. God calls us to be like him in this way. God calls us in some ways to be flesh, to dwell, to be among, to be with, to be human with people. And he calls us to show the glory of humility and love and the release of the power to dominate that was so displayed in the gospel glory. And I guess the question I want to ask is this, and I'd like us all to think about this carefully. Who do we identify with in this passage? Those who didn't see his glory, or those who saw his glory? Don't answer. But it's worth thinking about. What are our expectations? Because expectations are so powerful. We see what we want to see, what we desire. And sometimes I think we make Jesus who we want him to be instead of who he is. What do we see when we see Jesus? What are our expectations? What are our desires that prevent us from seeing who he is for who he is? I actually wonder what Jesus would see if he could come here as undercover boss. Maybe not here among this group, but maybe in a less holy church than us. What would Jesus see? What would he see? It seems like he might see God's people caring more about who doesn't belong than who belongs. And it's unexpected because Jesus actually was the opposite. The outside were in and the inside were out. He reversed everything. Seems like he might see God's people seeing loving others as the greatest command as an optional command. Once you've got everything else in place, do that if you feel like it, but it's a little weak. But the unexpected Jesus is the opposite of that. Loving others is the greatest command, the greatest calling. Seems like the unexpected Jesus might see, the undercover boss Jesus might see a church that loves power and winning and dominance in society. That is more concerned about the kingdoms of this world than the kingdom of God's world. And showing power, getting its way in the world. And the unexpected call of Jesus is to live for his kingdom first. Seems like Jesus would say, in the words of Andy Stanley, who's a preacher in the States, who has a lot of powerful things to say, the church isn't about winning, it's about following. He says this, the church always looks better when they're fighting for other people's rights rather than their own. So I think it's, for all of us today, the task is to let go of false expectations of who we think Jesus is and what he calls us to do. Because those first hearers of the text thought they knew everything. They thought they understood and they missed it because of their expectations. And today, I think we need to see Jesus for who he is. To let go and look and see. That's the invitation. I told you earlier, I am still learning how to be a pastor. You are helping me. Thank you for that. I actually feel like there should be a Pastors for Dummies book. And I would buy it. I need it. Still learning how to do that, learning about expectations that people have of me, but how I play off those expectations that I have because of those expectations. It gets a little complicated, right? That's the nature of human relationships and how we're wired. We actually have expectations, and we see things in the world through those expectations. And I think it's about letting go of that and striving to see Jesus for who he really is, trying to let go of those expectations. And I think not so much about being a pastor, but the transition, what does it mean to follow Jesus and be a disciple of Christ and let go of those expectations together as his body in Kelowna? What does that mean? I think a follower of Jesus is someone who lets go of those expectations and looks and sees what Jesus is like and tries to be like that. Many, most, did not see his glory, but some did. And they believed and they changed the world. They turned it upside down. They saw who Jesus was. And I really want to be among that group if I pick who I want to identify with. So I'm inviting you today to let go of your expectations and be open to what God is saying to you and to how Jesus challenges you in your own life to let go of those expectations, to represent him in the world, to see him for who he is, because I really think the world needs the church to look like Jesus desperately. Those who have eyes, let them see. Those who have ears, let them hear. This is an invitation. Let's try to be like Jesus. Amen.